When you hear the gospel for today, you think, gosh, that's a hit, that's a bullseye. I really like these vibrant tales of Jesus' mind at work. With this one, curiously, one thinks one has it. And the sense seems completely immediate, and obviously it impressed the listeners. That there were two opposing groups we know from records at the time. The question was hot stuff. The Herodians, the Hasmonean house was supported by them. And of course, they were in favour with the Romans in return for the favours of empire, namely taxes. So the other group, the Pharisees, were more nationalistic and had a distinct disapprobation on the business of paying taxes to Rome. There's a lot written about it at the time and a lot of fuss and palaver. In other words, this was a question you couldn't win. One lot report you for sedition. In fact, in the Gospel of Luke and the accusations against Jesus, one of the things brought against him was the paying of tribute, the phoros, that this hadn't been done. So that way the Romans get you. If you put it the other way round, the Jewish leaders aren't so keen because they insinuate that it shows unfaithfulness to the national ideal and to the national faith. Actually, people have taken this particular gospel to actually support their resistance to taxes. And I suppose one wonders whether Lady Godiva, trotting around in the nothings, had actually used this as support in her protest against taxes, raised no less by her husband, Leofric. So get your clothes off, folks, if you favour that one. Or is it, as other people have taken the gospel, this gospel, to be a statement of separation of money from religion? That's been a very popular interpretation. So we have to wonder, though, what might have been Jesus' thinking when he answered. I think the inscription on the coin, Tiberius Caesar Divi Augusti Filius Augustus, Tiberius Caesar, august son of the divine Augustus, might give us a lead. So many examples exist in the statutes and statute that the emperor was to be worshipped as a god. So is this Jesus alluding to the worship of a secular potentate, as if a god? We know where the emperors got with their deific self-beliefs. And maybe this explains why both parties in the story recounted would know with horror of the deification of the emperor, and that this is what satisfied them both about what they heard from Jesus. But you know, this isn't some archaeological find. Jesus, as often, has a message for today. A time when it would seem that the churches are accused of being bankrupt in their message. Namely, the effect of power on the mind to blime is multiply dangerous, big time, especially now. Power corrupts and corrupts absolutely. There's even evidence from computer dominance games that there are chemical and even structural changes in the brain if you, for only a little time, come to believe that you are the right one, that you're invincible, the winner. Certainly, this is something which Jesus encounters when he's in the wilderness. Command these stones to be made bread, says the tempter. And after 2 more goes, he even tries even harder. I will give you all the kingdoms of the world. And from that story we know Jesus rejected earthly power. The wise have known about it for some time. Behind conquering generals there was an auriga, a high office slave who was to whisper cautions in the ear. And the role of the clown and the jester was, inter alia, to restrain the follies of a medieval monarch. And nowadays, multiple experiments show us that we deceive our own minds, we deceive ourselves regularly in order to maintain a stable perception of ourselves. It's a universal Achilles heel. So this week has been the annual Conference of Science Journalists, and so I've been very locked into the topics each day. All of them, yes. Climate change right amongst the front. Then pandemics the next. And it's all about the capacity of ourselves and our systems to inevitably find ways to underestimate how much we and these systems can conceal reality and overblow our own human success. When we're tempted to swallow the succulent worm of righteousness, self-rightness, and a protective bias, we need to have a continual presence of God, lest we unreasonably squash others, promote lies, often albeit without malice aforethought, and oppress, also surprisingly without realizing. God, Jesus, is our jester. He's our clown, our auriga, reminding us, probably best on a daily basis, that total rightness and truth is not ours, and that ever more obvious in our time, the help could be from the numinous God's help. They laugh us to scorn, as the old saying goes. You may think this terribly old-fashioned, but I would remind you that the human race faces even greater risk of self-destruction because of the entrustment of control to artificial intelligence, and that you have another sort of emperor worship where the computer goes faster without self-reflexivity and tires the operator out and leads without warning that it can be fallible and do terrible things. Drone swarms, cyber attack, swift response weapons, nuclear included, and directed energy weapons, lasers and that sort of thing. There's no auriga, no jester, no clown to remind of our mortal state there. Now, these facts come from the journals of the Association for Scientists for Global Responsibility. I should know that, I'm a member, but there's a lot of facts there. So the invocation today from the Gospel is that we should pray for democracy. May we pray for journalists whose duty it is to unsettle oppressive and unevolving science, particularly in ethical areas such as I've just described. May we pray for those who may be deceived by their own bias, especially where they assume in powerful nations the mantle of emperor. And you know what I'm referring to in the current news. May we pray that we ourselves be free to exercise our opinion without the belief that we absolutely cannot be wrong, and to have unkindly forcing others to submit. May we pray that our gentle Jesus, also once a prisoner of time like us, remind us of the logic of a loving basis to ultimately everything, and remind us further, as implied in our gospel, that we do well to worship a greater power beyond our mortal remit, and that joined with others we stand a chance of caring better for the planet and for what we believe are God's children. That's what I think Jesus had in mind. Of course, I might be wrong.